Yeah, so I think it's always exciting to get a live demo. So my lightning talk is a live demo. So I guess to start off, do people know what questioning authority is?
My children.
One shaking head no. So I'll give the quick piece of it, and if there's time at the end, I'll give a little more detail. But it basically allows you to access external authorities to go out and do like controlled vocabulary type stuff and create, get information back that can let you do an autocomplete field, that kind of thing. So I'm not really talking about QA itself. What we've done is we have, let me use that up. So what we're doing as part of the linked data for production grant is creating a server that's up all the time that you can use to access these authorities from any platform. So this is not Hyrax. You can use it in Hyrax, but you can also use it in a Java-based application, which we're doing for ours, and you can use it from any other language. And so the home screen just gives you a quick introduction. The usage screen tells you how to actually make use of this. So it just gives some documentation about how, and this is really how questioning authority it works. So for example, it gives what URL you would use if you were going to make a query to get back multiple terms, and gives you an example of what that return result would look like when you get the data back. So the next thing it does is it will list all the authorities for this particular service. This is all the authorities that are in place. And so this is a super quick way to get it. I'm going to show you there's another way to get all the authorities. But this will give you example links for all these. So you can just do like a right click. I like to put it in a new screen. And it'll show you what return results came back. So in this case, the example I showed you on the documentation page was for a query where you get back multiple terms. This one I asked for a specific term. So this is a whole bunch of data about a specific term. This is JSON. There's no good way to see it as actual JSON just because that's what Firefox does with it. But although this one looks a little better, I think it should work. Ignore any bouncing out icons. All right, that doesn't work anymore. So anyway, we can also do it to get a search term from that same authority. So in this case, if we look at this, the URL is saying the authorities is basically just where my QA gem is mounted. And then the for QA search linked data says we're going to do a linked data search. There are other ways to do other modules that are installed in QA that don't use linked data. The one that I created allows you to do configurations on linked data. So if I wanted to add another authority, I don't have to do any programming in QA. I can just put in a configuration file. If we have time, I can show you what that looks like. So I do that, and in this case, I'm going to get back a whole bunch of terms that match my particular query. So I think I queried for milk. Yes, in Agravoc, which is an agricultural authority. And when you do queries, they all look basically the same as this, but I will show you one other one because I made an extension to QA, and this is only in a particular branch. It's not in the QA proper, that it lets you get context back. So GeoNames is one of the ones that will return context. There's only a couple of them that are configured to do that. So now when I get terms back, I don't just get that little piece of data that I would use to drive like an autocomplete field. I get additional data. So I have my parent 2, I have the country, latitude and longitude. All of this is context that the application developer can use to provide more context when they're letting the cataloger choose which one of these things they actually want. So the autocomplete is just going to give you basically the name, but this can give you a whole bunch of extra detail that you can present to the user so they can make a more accurate selection. Okay, one of the things that we found is that sometimes authorities are down, and it's really nice if you're not getting any results back to say, well, am I not getting any results back because there was no match, or am I not getting results back because the authority is down? So you can use this to check all the authorities at once, but that's super slow. So we're just going to check one authority. And when I do that, I checked it for mesh, and it comes back and it says, mesh is up. So if you're not getting any results for your query, it's not because mesh is not working. So we found that to be extremely useful. And the last thing we do, because we want to know right now, actually this is not right at this moment in time, this is at midnight. So every night at midnight, I do run all the authorities. And so it tells me that at least at midnight, last night, all my authorities were up. And I will tell you that actually at midnight, all my authorities were not up. I got up this morning and started looking through this, and I was like, oh my gosh, my demo's today, the authorities are up. So I'll show you what that looks like actually when they're not up. Because I kept that screen. If I reread it now, it would not show this. But this is what it looks like when they're not up. They came up and told me, I have 91 that are failing. And those are multiple tests for an authority. So there's only 12 authorities that were failing. And then it lists it, and normally over this error column, it would tell me why they're failing. And for some reason, I'm not getting any error messages on this one. But this was actually on my test machine and not on the live one. So the live one probably gave me more information, but I reran it there because I wanted my real users to know that everything's fine. Okay, and there's one other thing. So this is the live one, and you'll see that when it gets to monitor status, it's pretty much done. I'm in the process of pushing out API documentation. Let me bring that up. So there's two things actually on this page. This is that monitor status page again, and you can see all my tests are actually up now. But I also have a history that shows for all of these, how long have they been passing or failing. Now, this is on my test machine, so it doesn't have a lot of data. It's only got 6 days. So you can see that it's failed. Basically, that's, I think, one failure, maybe two for those. And then you can see the others that are up. So you can start to get a feel for, over time, which of your authorities are up most of the time and which ones are having problems. And I don't know if you noticed, but in those names, like there's Agravoc Direct, and then there's Agravoc LD4L Cache. That's because we actually cache a lot of these authorities so that we can tweak their indexing and we can control whether or not they're up. And if problems come up, we can sort of address that. But you can actually hit some of these directly too. So we have it both ways. And one other thing, let's see. So that history stuff isn't live yet, that's on my test machine. And the other thing that's not on the live one is I just recently added the latest release of questioning authority. Now versions the API. And I don't want to support multiple APIs at a time, so basically the version 2.1 matches up to the QA release number. So when if I want to change the API and release a new, I have to change the QA's version number, which it would change anyway if the API is changing. So it's really easy for me just to make the API's version number match up to the QA version number. And so I added Swagger documentation. Anyone used Swagger already? Seen it? It's really pretty cool. So it has basically a JSON file that you define the structure of your API in, and then it provides this UI. So I didn't have to write any of this UI. I got this for free. You can provide it with multiple servers. I have mine defaulting to localhost just because I'm testing it right now, but you can also, if you have want to change that up, you can actually let yourself specify that. But I'm going to stick with the localhost. So it tells me what all of my API possibilities are. So the search link data is like the prefix part of it, and the vocab is the part that can change. I can put in what the parameters are that you can affect, and I can try it out live right here. So what should we search for?
Cows.
Cows. I was going to search for cows too. Great minds think alike. So we can change all these parameters. You'll notice that I also have a language parameter. So some vocabularies will send back their strings in different languages. And so you can say, I want to get it in French, or I want to get it in English, which I'm going to do English. And I do execute, and it shows me exactly what curl command gets executed. And then it says 404, did I do the term instead of a search? No, I did a search. There's gotta be cows in there. We'll put it back in milk and just make sure it executes. No, it's getting a 404. I don't know why it's getting a 404. This is the problem with line earphones. You just shouldn't be on. All right, and I can't show you that because it's getting it there. It's probably the whole system is not hooked in proper. But so one of the things it tells you in the documentation is it'll tell you what your possible return codes are. So my possible return codes for this is should be a 200, a 500, and a 503. So 404 shouldn't even be a possibility. What if it's doing localhost 3000? I don't know what this mount thing is. That's incorrect.
You changed this.
I changed that. That's why. Let's try it again. So you can see that's the nice thing is it does actually let you do it live. Now that looks good. And now we have a response. So we can put our cow back in there now. Or anyone know a French word?
We,
Well, that one won't work. That won't be in there. I think it was,
Hyrax.
Croissant.
Leche.
Fromage.
I know,
it's gotta be
Fromage.
something agricultural.
Do we do
Fromage.
Spanish? Oh, fromage.
Fromage. Those would be good.
L-A-I-T, I think, is milk.
Is that spelled right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So then our results are now in French instead of English. So like I said, it'll document the other kinds of errors you get. We have CORS headers in there too, which lets you do test flight to see if you can do things across platforms. And it will come back and tell you that it succeeded. It comes back and puts a header on there. 204, basically 204 is success. That means it tried to do the test flight, it was happy with the test flight, but it's telling you there's no real data that comes back with it, because all it did was the test flight. I don't know, are you guys familiar with the CORS headers thing? It basically, if you try to access JavaScript on one thing and then you're doing it from another, they don't like that, and so a lot of times the servers won't let you do it.
Oh,
But if
cross,
you send
cross-domain.
cross-domain
course.
stuff, yeah, I think that's actually what it even stands for. But if you get this access, oh, that's awful highlighting there. If you get that access control, allow origin star, that tells the browser that it's okay that you're doing that. The other one for that is, it'll come back and tell you what methods you can actually execute with the cross. So it's telling you can do get and options. So that's the basics of this, and we could go through there and do that for all the API pieces, but I don't think it gets any more interesting than what I've already shown you. The one thing it does also document is what your data is going to look like. So it tells you that this is what you can expect. You can always expect an ID, a URI, and a label, and sometimes you'll get back context for a search. And it does the same thing for the term. Okay, so any questions about that? And I can show you like the structure of like the architecture of questioning authority and how it works in general, if you guys are interested in that.
People want to do that,
I
that's
think
great.
it's
It's also time for the break if.
Oh, if it's time for the break, then I think I did enough. And I did propose an unconference session to talk about this kind of stuff for people who want to dive into it deeper. So